Hey guys, it's Pelican here and welcome to my Magsorc solo PvP build for the Greymoor patch. Magsorc is a lot more favourable this patch for solo, that's because it's hardly been affected by the nerfs in healing, which has made it a lot harder to survive on most other classes. And on top of that, it has also received a lot of damage boosts such as the updates to the arena weapons. And in fact, the damage of Magsorc now is comparable to that in Summerset 2 years ago. In this video, I'll be going through and explaining what sets and skills to run, as well as my CP and any other alternative gear that you can run. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So firstly, I'll be going through my gear setup. I'm running 2-piece Engine Guardian, 5-piece Elfic, 5-piece Leech on the back bar, and on my front bar I'm running the Master Inferno. As you all know, Bloodspawn, which is one of the best solo PvP sets previously, has been nerfed a lot, so I decided to explore some other options. Engine Guardian was also one of the best Magsorc sets back then, and it has its resource return nerfed quite significantly, but it also now gives increased healing, which is helpful since we get a lot less healing now. And not many people might know this, but Engine Guardian also has its proc chance increased from 10 to 25%. For some reason it wasn't included in the patch notes, so that's a significant buff to this patch as well. To this set. Another benefit of Engine Guardian is the body block that it provides. When Engine Guardian procs, it can provide a lot of shielding from enemy attacks. It has a lot of HP, over 30k in Cyrodiil, and on top of that you can ward it as well. So it gives you an additional line of sight. However, one major drawback of this set is that because we are on a very mobile class, it can fail to catch up at times. So if you were to cast Streak, you will usually lose out on a few ticks of the Engine Guardian. So that's one major downside of using this set, but I still think it's overall a very good set to use. Next up is Crafty Elfic. This is one of the best sets for Magsorc because it gives you a lot of Max Magicka. And as you all know, on Magsorc, Magicka is very important because your main defense, which is your damage shields, scale directly off your Max Magicka only. So on a Magsorc, you have to stack as much Max Magicka as possible. So on our build, we have more than 45k, which gives us a shield that's larger than 11k in CP Cyrodiil. For our back bar, I'm running Leech. Leech is the best sustain set, the best 1-bar sustain set for Mag classes. It gives you a lot of sustain when you really need it, and the cooldown might seem quite long, 1 minute, but once it procs, you wouldn't need to worry about your sustain for a while. And finally, for my front bar, I'm running the Master Inferno. Master Inferno has received a significant buff this patch. It gives you 600 spell damage whenever you cast your Flame Clench, which is our CC ability. And if you have the perfected version, that's an additional 100 spell damage. So using this set will grant you a massive boost to your burst combo. And it's basically just it's pretty much a one-piece Clever Alchemist. It's not necessary to have the perfected version. If you already have the normal version and you do not wish to farm for it, it's fine to lose out on just a bit of spell damage. For my armor traits, I'm running 3 Infuse on the big pieces and 4 Impen on the small ones. Make sure the Infuse trait is on the big pieces because the enchantments on the small pieces are only 40% as strong. Because of the 1.3k crit resistance given to us, it's very easy to hit over 3k crit resistance now, which I think is the ideal number. And in fact, with just 3 Impen pieces, you have more crit resistance than the 7 Impen build last patch. So that gives you room for a lot of other choices for your traits. I decided to run Infused because it gives me more Max Magicka for my for larger wards, and it also gives me more HP and stam since I'm running the prismatic tri-stack glyphs on the big pieces. You can also choose to run some well-fitted on your other pieces instead of Impen. Well-fitted is a really underrated set. It's very good if you sprint and dodge a lot. and I've been considering running one or two well-fitted myself. For my jewelry, I'm running all Max Magicka. As mentioned before, Max Magicka is very important. You can also choose to run Triune instead and take out some prismatic glyphs from the larger pieces. You can use the various options given to fine-tune your HP and stamp values to your liking. Personally, I have 25.7k HP in Cyrodiil and 17.3k stamp. And for my enchantments, I'm running a spell damage glyph, a mag recovery glyph, and one of them is the new tri-stat regen glyph. Now the reason I like this tri-stat regen glyph so much is because I feel that without it, my stamp sustain isn't ideal, and if I were to run a pure stamp regen glyph, I will have too much stamp sustain. So this is just the perfect balance point for it. For my back bar, I'm running an infused weapon damage enchantment. Now this will grant you a massive increase in damage whenever you light attack on your back bar. So before you burst someone, you want to light attack on your back bar to proc this enchantment, and the enchantment combined with the Master Inferno buff that we have will grant you a massive boost in your spell damage. And on this build we have almost 3.8k spell damage. And some of you might be wondering why I swapped to Ice Staff from Sword and Board previously. That's because I feel that I found that it is more beneficial to have higher bursts now, so I decided to run Ice Staff instead. You can also choose to run Sword and Board on your back bar, and that will make you a lot more tanky while you're on your back bar, because you get larger shields and more resistance. But I feel that the Ice Staff is better, and on top of that it's also easier to farm, because the first boss of the Crypt of Hearts 1 drops the Ice Staff often. And on my front bar, I'm running Sharpen with Shock Enchantment. I personally like Sharpen more because it does more damage against high resistance targets. And I choose to run the Shock Enchantment Glyphs because it has a chance of proccing minor vulnerability, which further increases your damage done to your opponent. You can also choose to run Infused for more pressure, or you can also run double dot poisons. There are some alternatives you can use over Engine Guardian. You can choose to run One Piece Dummy Horse and one of the new mythic sets. I highly recommend the Talk of Tonal Constancy. It gives you a massive amount of sustain when you're low on resources, which can really help turn the fight around. And in fact, I think it might be even better than Engine Guardian, because on Magsorc, you can convert stamp back to Magicka using Dark Conversion. So when you're using the set and you're low on Magicka, you can use the additional stamp recovery to convert some of it back to Magicka, ensuring that you will always benefit from that set. Some people say that the damage ring is really good. However, it will absolutely not work on this build because we are relying on critical damage for our healing. And on top of that, Magsorc, especially in CP environment, relies a lot on crit damage for their burst. So it might actually even result in your average damage being lower. You can also choose to run the Ring of the Wild Hunt for increased mobility. And if you don't want to run Mythic, you can choose to run One Piece Dummy Horse or One Piece Swarm Mother for more max stamp and Magicka. If you want pressure, you can choose to run 2-piece Maw of the Infernal. This is really good for defeating tanky targets. It is one of the best pressure sets in the game right now. And you can even choose to run 2-piece Bloodspawn again. I think it's still a decent set, but there are definitely better alternatives now. Now I'll be going through my skill setup. On my front bar, I'm running Boundless Storm, Crystal Frax, Crushing Shock, Haunting Curse, Flame Clench, and Storm Echo. Boundless Storm is your main utility skill. It gives you your mobility and defense, and that defense is especially important now because we are in light armor and we no longer have the resistance provided by Bloodspawn. The damage it does is also very useful. You can use it to pull Nightblades out of stealth, but most importantly, it will ensure that your crit surge is proc constantly, so that you have sufficient healing. You can also use this skill together with Ball of Lightning to gain an immense amount of mobility and let you kite enemies very easily. Next up is Crystal Frags. This is your main burst ability. You want to time this to go off together with a Haunting Curse for a massive amount of burst. Try not to cast this without the proc because it's a channel and it will leave you very vulnerable, and on top of that it does less damage. Crushing Shock is your main spammable. I chose to run this over the Siege Order skill because I like having the utility. It allows me to interrupt enemies who are rezzing, and you can also use it to stun people who are snipe spamming you. Haunting Curse is your other burst ability. As mentioned before, time it together with your Crystal Frags for a lot of burst. And lastly, we have Flame Clench, which is your crowd control ability. By itself, it's not a very good skill. It only does a bit of damage, and the biggest drawback is that the range is only 15 meters. And because your other skills have a range of 28 meters, they can leave you in some awkward positions where you are unable to crowd control an enemy. However, when paired with the Master Inferno staff, it gives you a massive damage boost when you cast a Flame Clench, and that will allow your follow-up frags as well as your Curse Explosion to deal a lot more damage. Finally, for my ult, I'm running the Storm Atro. Storm Atro is a really good defensive and offensive ult. You can use it as a stun as well because it has a rather huge radius and as well as damage on the initial cast. And once casted, you can use it as an additional shield. You can line your sight around it for more defense. And make sure you know how to target enemies with it. You will have to use the command pad skill to bind to target your enemies with it. So basically, once you have the Storm Atro down, you have to hold the key bind and light attack at the enemy that you wish to target. An alternative to Storm Atro is Overload. Overload is probably the best pressure out in the game. It does a lot of damage, and you can use it to easily defeat tankier targets. And because of the way Overload works, you can even save up 500 out before a fight, and you can enter the fight with a lot of Overload casts available. On my back bar, I'm running Dark Conversion, Ball of Lightning, Dampen Magic, Harden Ward, Crit Surge, and Temporal Guard. Dark Conversion is your main sustain skill. It lets you convert stam back into Magicka and HP, and it complements Engine Guardian really well because sometimes when the stam proc happens, you might have too much stam to spend, so you can use it to convert some Magicka back. Try to keep the mag return overtime portion of this skill up as much as possible to maximize its benefits. And since it's a channel skill, you are very vulnerable when casting it and you can be interrupted. So the best time to cast Dark Conversion would be right after you break free, because not only are you immune to the interrupts and crowd controls, but you also benefit from the Unchained passive, which will make your Dark Conversion basically cost nothing. Next up is Ball of Lightning. This is your main mobility skill. It's the best mobility skill in the game in my opinion, and you can also use it to absorb some projectiles. So this is really useful in the open field. If you are getting chased by a large group of enemy players using ranged abilities, you can use it to quickly escape behind cover. However, do take note that it will only start absorbing projectiles once the animation stops playing. So when you're casting, when the animation is still playing and someone casts a projectile on you, it will still hit you after you have teleported. So just be careful of that. And on top of that, make sure you don't cast this too many times in a row because the cost will keep stacking. So I wouldn't cast it more than 4 times in a row. Next up is Dampen, Magic and Hardened Ward. These two abilities are your main defense skills. Hardened Ward is better than Dampen because it costs less and it also heals for more, although you can't see it here. So try to cast Harden first before you use Dampen. And if you are fighting players who don't deal a lot of damage, you don't even need to cast Dampen at all. And finally, we have Crit Surge. This is your main healing ability, and it also gives you your spell damage. Keep this skill up at all times alongside Boundless Storm to ensure that your health doesn't fall too low. And finally, we have Temporal Guard for the ultimate. It gives you 8% less damage taken while you're on your back bar, so it can be really useful for surviving. And on top of that, the active portion of this ability is a really powerful defensive out. You can use it to easily outmaneuver a large group of enemies. And previously I didn't really like using it because it bugged out a lot, but this patch I haven't experienced any issues with it, so I really highly recommend this skill. Other than that, for my attributes I'm running all points into Magicka, and for my Mundus I'm running the Mage. For my food I'm running the Bewitched Sugar Skulls, which is basically an advanced version of the Tri-Stat food. This is my favorite food in the game by far, because it gives you HP recovery on top of your Tri-Stat. And this is very useful this patch especially, because HP recovery is not affected by the Battle Spirit nerf. And paired with the one line of health regen from Engine Guardian, this will give you an insane amount of health recovery for a light armor build at 1.2k. And in fact, I feel like my overall healing on Magsorc has improved this patch despite of the healing nerf, simply because my health regen is a lot higher than before. And for my potions, I'm running the Essence of Immovability. I'm running the one that gives me Spell Crit and Magicka. And I also have some other potions such as Detect Pods for enemy Nightblades. And when I'm entering a really intense fight and running out of resources, I like to swap to the Tri-Stat pods. One more thing to take note is to not put any points in the Tri-Focus passive, because you do not want your blocks on your back bar to cost Magicka. Don't worry, you will still get a block cost reduction from the Ancient Knowledge passive. And it won't really affect you much because we hardly do any flame staff heavy attacks. And for my race, I'm running High Elf. High Elf is my favorite race for Magsorc. It gives you a lot of stam recovery, which is very useful on Magsorc, and you also take less damage while channeling, which helps with casting Dark Conversion. I've made a guide video on what race to use on Magsorc before. You can also use Breton and Dark Elf, but if you're not sure of which race best suits you, do check out that video as well. And finally, for my CP, I'm running 66 in Ironclad and 44 resistance for my raid, 43 in Hardy and Ally, and 34 in Thick Skin for your Unchained passive, and 40 into Bastion. The green CP is entirely up to you. You can tweak it to match your playstyle more. Personally, I like having 56 Warlord and 19 Sprinter. Make sure to have 1 point in Siphoner to give enemies an extra thing to purge. 49 in Alchemist and 7 in Mooncarth. 72 in Tumbling and 66 in Shadow Ward because I roll a lot and I also block cancel a lot. For my green tree, I'm running 66 Elfborn, 64 Elemental Expert, 50 in Spell Erosion. You don't need any Blast because most of the defense comes from wards. 9 Staff Expert and 81 Master at Arms, and nothing in this tree. So that's all for the build. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Do leave a comment if you have any questions, and sorry for the recent inactivity. I've been busy with schoolwork as well as other games, but this patch has opened up a lot of room for creative builds, and I have some in mind right now, so do stay tuned for more. And once again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.